Imagine standing on the jagged granite cliffs of Cape Spear, Newfoundland. You are standing at the easternmost point of North American soil. As the first rays of the Atlantic sun hit your face, the world behind you is still deep in sleep. In Whitehorse, Yukon, it is still the middle of the night, 4.5 time zones away. If you decided to drive from this cliff to the Pacific coast, it would take you 7 days of non-stop driving through landscapes that change as often as the weather. This is Canada. It is the second largest country on Earth, spanning nearly 10 million square kilometers. But to call it a country almost feels like an understatement. It is a continent. It is a living, breathing mosaic of 6 distinct worlds, each with its own climate, its own soul, and its own ancient history. Today, we aren't just looking at borders or political lines. We are embarking on a journey through the heart of the Great White North to understand how the land itself has shaped the spirit of a nation. Our journey begins in the east, the Appalachian Highlands and the Maritimes. This is a land defined by its violent yet beautiful relationship with the sea. The geography here is ancient. These mountains, the Appalachians, were once as tall and sharp as the Alps, but hundreds of millions of years of Atlantic storms and grinding glaciers have worn them down into the rolling green hills we see today. But the true power here is the water. In the Bay of Fundy, the geography creates a unique funnel effect. Twice a day, 100 billion tons of seawater, more than the flow of all the world's freshwater rivers combined, surges into the bay. It is a literal pulse of the planet. The tides here rise 16 meters, the height of a 5-story building, in just 6 hours. When the tide goes out, you can walk on the ocean floor, looking up at massive flower pot rocks carved by the friction of the moon-driven sea. It is a constant reminder that in the east, the land belongs to the ocean. As we head west, the salt air disappears, replaced by the scent of damp earth, black spruce, and ancient stone. We have entered the Canadian Shield. This is the geological nucleus of North America. Covering nearly half of Canada's total landmass, it is a massive horseshoe of pre-Cambrian rock. Some of these rocks are over 4 billion years old. When you stand on the Shield, you are standing on the very first pieces of the Earth's crust that ever cooled from a molten state. This landscape was shaped by what some call the fist of God, the great glaciers of the last ice age. 2 miles of ice once sat on this land, grinding the mountains into dust and gouging out millions of holes. When the ice finally melted, it left behind a labyrinth of water. Canada has more lake area than any other country in the world, and most of it is right here. It is a beautiful but brutal geography, a barrier of rock and muskeg that forced the early explorers to travel by canoe, creating the legendary voyageur culture that birthed the early Canadian identity. It is a treasure chest of minerals, but a fortress for those who try to build upon it. Tucked under the chin of the massive Shield is the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Lowlands. This is the smallest geographical region, but it is the absolute heart of Canadian life. It holds the Great Lakes, Superior, Huron, Michigan, Erie, and Ontario. Together, these 5 massive bodies of water hold 20% of the entire world's surface fresh water. The geography here is soft and welcoming. The retreating glaciers left behind deep, rich, silty soil that makes this the most fertile land in the country. This is why 50% of all Canadians live in this tiny sliver of land. It is dominated by the St. Lawrence River, a massive blue highway that connects the heart of the continent to the global ocean. Without this specific geological drain, Canada's history, its major cities like Toronto and Montreal, and its economy would simply not exist. It is the corridor of life. Now, the trees suddenly vanish. The world opens up. You can see the horizon for 100 miles in every direction. This is the interior plains, or the prairies. Stretching through Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, this was once the floor of a massive inland sea millions of years ago. As that sea disappeared, organic matter settled, creating the richest topsoil on Earth and vast pools of oil and gas hidden deep beneath the tall grass. They call this Big Sky Country for a reason. The geography here is about perspective. In the summer, the fields of wheat ripple like a golden ocean under a sky that feels so heavy. But the plains have deep secrets. In southern Alberta, the earth suddenly cracks open to reveal the Badlands. Wind and rain have carved out hoodoos, alien-looking stone towers, and peeled back the layers of time to reveal the richest dinosaur bone beds on the planet. It is a graveyard of prehistoric giants hidden beneath a modern sea of grain. Suddenly, the plains end. A wall of gray and white rises from the earth. The Rocky Mountains and the Western Cordillera. These are young mountains, jagged, sharp, and still growing. This is a vertical world where geography dictates the weather. As moist air from the Pacific hits these massive peaks, it is forced upward, cooling and dumping massive amounts of rain and snow. This creates two worlds in one. On the western slopes, you find temperate rainforests, ancient cedars, and Douglas firs dripping with moss, where it feels like time has stood still for 1,000 years. On the eastern side, in the rain shadow, the land is dry and high. From the turquoise, glacial-fed waters of Lake Louise to the deep, dark fjords of the British Columbia coast, the Cordillera is a landscape of power and extremes. It is the spine of the continent, and it demands respect from anyone who crosses it. Finally, we turn our eyes toward the magnetic north. Above the tree line, where the forest finally gives up, lies the Arctic Tundra. This is a world of permafrost, ground that is frozen solid, hundreds of meters deep, and never thaws. It is a polar desert, a maze of over 36,000 islands known as the Arctic Archipelago. In the short, intense summer, the sun never sets. The midnight sun illuminates a land of tiny, resilient flowers and roaming caribou. In the long winter, the sun vanishes for months, replaced by the dancing neon ribbons of the aurora borealis. This is a geography of absolute silence and incredible survival. It is the most fragile part of our planet, a place where the Earth is still emerging from the cold grip of the last great ice age. From the rainforests of the west to the ice fields of the north and the rocky shores of the east, Canada's geography is more than just a background. It is the main character in the story of this land. It dictates how we travel, where we build our homes, and how we see the world. It is a land of infinite variety, bound together by the sheer scale of its untamed beauty. To know Canada is to walk its ancient rocks, sail its millions of lakes, and respect its deep silence. Because in this land, geography isn't just a map, it is our destiny.